So if you've ever moved house, you'll know all about this. You don't notice you're accumulating things, and then you go to move house and you have to pack everything, and you have to physically hold and touch all this stuff. Then you realize, oh, wow, I've just slowly been accumulating all this stuff. And that's not to say that that stuff owns you, but it just really highlights how unconsciously we just accumulate things. And it, there's a common misconception in the idea of detachment, and it's almost like of divesting yourself. And it's a tradition in spiritual practice where you give away all your possessions and then you go and join the monastery, whatever. And there's something to be said for that, because ultimately, you're we come into existence with nothing and we go out of it with nothing as well, except what we have got inside, internal. That's why I've always been interested in consciousness, because it's what you can bring with you. Or you certainly can't bring the Rolls Royce with you. I don't know whether you can bring the consciousness with you. I'll tell you after I die. But you've got a better chance of it. So there's a kind of a subtle thing there, because people who come out of monastic life, often they have a lot of trouble with dealing with everything, with dealing with, like if you own a car, for example, it's like, great, whoa, drive down the road, freedom, yay. But then you've got all the stuff to do with the car, depending on what country you're in. You've got insurance, you've got tax, you've got upkeep, you've got to put fuel in it. There's a lot. And that can, that's just a car. And then there's a house, and then there's every single little thing in the house. If you've got a refrigerator, or if you've got a washing machine or a dishwasher, or should you get a dishwasher? What about the environment? It's never ending. And that can feel heavy. That can feel like so much stuff. And the idea of just giving it all away and just wandering the land, walking the land, or going and joining a monastery, or going living in a cave. But the funny thing about living in a cave is, after the first little while, then you're into, where do you go to the bathroom? And there's no Wi-Fi signal. Well, I gave away my phone, but I'm kind of a bit lonely now. And what am I going to have for dinner? And where will I cook my dinner? And okay, people are going to bring me alms. Okay, but then how do they know I'm here? And it's all part of the, just the funniness of life. And the thing is that the delicate balance is to be able to have the things without the things having you. And that you are very conscious that you just got custodianship of everything. That nothing is, you don't actually ever own anything. That really all you do is you're just holding it for a little while, and then it's going to pass on to somebody else. I saw this so, I don't know, tragically with my mother. Like my mother's house after she died, we all took what we wanted, and anything that was meaningful to us or had, sentimental value. And the rest, it was just like, God, what are we going to do with all this stuff? And, you go to any estate sale, it's the same. A person's whole life reflected in what they own. I mean, unless you're a famous artist or writer and they preserve your house and like, oh, this is where he sat, this is where he painted, this is where he composed the music or whatever, or she painted or whatever. Unless it's going to be like that, it's just going to go back into the world. People are going to buy, end up with your thing. And that's kind of okay, isn't it? Unless you particularly want a little shrine to your life. And, if you really want that, you could probably organize it before you go. I'm not sure how many people would go to it. But we kind of have a shrine to our life inside. Like with my mother, she put so much thought and care into the upkeep of our house and into all her little possessions and her couch. And she would kind of go, oh, thinking of changing the couch and or the carpet or the doors or the windows. It was always something, and it was a big thing for her. And just to see it all just like, a bit like her body, a bit like my body is going to go and yours is going to go as well. The cells in our body are going to return. The atoms are going to go back into and reconstitute into other things, and it's the same. Our possessions are just going to be absorbed into secondhand shops or just garbage. They're just going to be thrown away. But they're going to break down eventually, there's not too much plastic. Let's not go down that road. And it will all dissipate. So I find that kind of knowledge helps me to remember that I'm free of all my possessions. And like for me, I've never been big into owning lots and lots of different things. But for me, and this was long before Maria Kondo came along, and she's the organizing your cupboard lady. Sorry, Marie, I don't mean to diminish what you're doing, but that's the way I think of her. But one of the things she was saying was like, if you're not sure whether you want something, it's like, have you touched it in the last year, this thing, and does it bring you joy? And I figured that out a long time ago myself. Like, there are things that I would get, and I would kind of be really into getting them, and then when I get them, I'd be a bit ambivalent afterwards. And then there were other things that made me smile every time I saw them or every time I used them. I can remember the first thing was a pair of shoes, and every time I looked at them, and I think I had them for 5 or 6 years, maybe even longer, and every time I looked at them, I smiled with enjoyment. And that's a great barometer. And I can tell pretty quickly now whether I feel that way about something. And I only get things that make me smile like that. And if I have 3 or 4 of something, I'm a bit like, makes me a bit uncomfortable. Or if I have something and I don't use it that much, or as much as I thought I was going to use it, it makes me a bit antsy. I want to move it along to somebody who's going to use it more than I am, because I thought I was going to use it a lot, but now not so much. But even with that, I still accumulate stuff, but I accumulate a lot less stuff than other people. So I think remembering you're going to die is a great way of not having things own you. And I didn't mention debt, but I should, because that's one way that things own you. There's very little I would go into debt for. I don't need debt. The object itself is only going to give a certain amount of pleasure. There are certain things that they cost so much, like cars and things. They cost so much that I can understand why people go into debt for them. But most stuff that people go into debt for is unnecessary. You can get by with the thing. The debt is very difficult. It's very energetically draining to be in debt for things, and to kind of, you're enjoying the thing. I mean, we're fickle kind of creatures. We get things and they're great, and then they lose our, we're not that interested in them anymore. But we're still paying for them, and that's very hard going. So I'll avoid debt like it's unnecessary, because there's most of the things you can get. You can get them without needing to go into debt. Because if you need to go into debt for it, you probably don't need it. Not that much. But, we're marketed to. We're made to feel like, oh no, I definitely need that. I definitely need that thing. But we don't. And that debt is one way that something owns you then. Because you think, oh, I've got this great new thing, got this great new TV. It's 5 inches bigger than the previous one, and it's much sharper. And you think you own it, but it owns you because you're still paying for it. So having the balance of not just getting rid of everything because it's all too much, but having things, having the pressure of having things, and knowing it's all going to just disappear when you do. helps you be light with it, light the balance of the two.